Hello and welcome everybody to our webinar today. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your day to join us. Today we're going to be going through a customer story of Jacques Marie Mage, where we use NetSuite and some customizations from us to solve their global distribution challenges. So a little bit about what we are going to be going over today. First, we will go into the story of Jacques Marie Mage and a little bit of company background so you guys have an idea of what's going on there. Then we'll go into a little bit about us at AlphaBOLD. Then we will look at their business challenges and kind of what drove their change and drive to switch over to an ERP like NetSuite. Then we'll go into kind of what solutions we developed and the improvements that they saw as far as those changes are concerned. We'll look at what's next as far as what we can do with NetSuite to help enhance their business, and then open it up for a little Q&A. And if at any point during this presentation you guys do have questions, I'll be looking at that questions box and we'll try to answer those either throughout the presentation or at the end. So a little bit about what we are looking at today. My name is Nick. I'm the sales manager here at AlphaBOLD. We are joined by Ilya Budimir. He's our NetSuite practice manager. And then we are lucky to have a couple guests with us today. Vivian Ha, who is the product coordinator, and then Andrea Tonello, who is the CFO over at Jacques Marie Mage. Let's move on. For some reason, my screen is freaking out, so I can't move on. There we go. So a little bit about JMM. Andrea, did you want to give us a little bit of a picture of who you guys are, where you came from, where you started, and kind of how you entered that global market?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us. It's pretty exciting talking about what we have gone through in the last few years. So Jacques Marie Mage is a relatively new player in the independent eyewear industry. The company started off from the idea of the founder and current creative director and CEO, Jacques Mage, a French native that moved to California about 20 years or more ago, with a passionate designer who has been in the world of eyewear for quite a long time, mostly sport related, designing goggles and technical eyewear for a long time before starting his own venture with Jacques Marie Mage. And in 2014, along with his longtime partner Josh Kreitman, instead a SoCal native and passionate surfer, they just saw an opportunity in the very top of the pyramid in terms of positioning. So they founded Jacques Marie Mage with the idea of being the best high quality provider in the eyewear industry. So we're talking about sunglasses and optical handcrafted in Japan. Every single item is a limited edition. The process takes a fairly long time. We're looking at 6 months or more from the inception all the way to the release of the product. The company grew very fast. Actually, their idea was very successful. They did something unique, starting using a thicker sheet of acetate to produce a very unique style of eyewear. The response of the market was great. The business basically doubled every year. And at the end of 2018, they did realize that they had something. There's something in there. They really invested a lot to get the product right, but once you have the product right, then you're comfortable in saying that there is a future, and that's where they started, like hiring new people, bringing in new skills, and along with that, also the desire of scaling this business required a different machine engine underneath, and that's where NetSuite came along, and partnership project, and so forth and so on. And today we are further expanding internationally. We have been historically pretty much a man brand, but we started talking to women as well, and this is going to be more and more common. We are going to be loyal to our independent eyewear network, but we started, kind of challenging also those big guys in the fashion industry, and we'll try to do that more and more in our own way. But that's part of the plan. It's true that the market, especially in this high price point area, is getting more and more crowded. In the sense that after years and years that this big label, the likes of Louis Vuitton, Gucci, they started realizing that quality is relevant. So, style and fashionable, eyewear was good, but the customer is more and more attentive to the details and the quality. So there are challenges, but I think we are ready from a product perspective to keep the path that we have been into for quite a while, and it's a matter of being very good also on the execution of our plans going forward.
Yeah, and I mean, if you guys are doubling sales every year, then you're doing something right. Say that.
No complaint. Even last year, when kind of everybody was being conservative and slowing down, we decided to go all in. Also, thank you to some support on the financial side from some additional investors who saw the potential of the brand. We were able to actually accelerate, and ever since June of last year, the business has been really running fast. So we are happy. Along with that, there is a good, I always say this like a good problem to have. Today we have an excess of demand compared to what we can supply, and that's where probably we'll focus our conversation in the next few minutes, because that's where our partnership has become critical in our success.
Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. So moving on to a little bit about AlphaBOLD. We are a consulting firm in San Diego, California. Well, North County, San Diego, and Carlsbad. We were founded back in 2017. We have about 75, I believe now, experts over here. And we have two different practices, one being NetSuite, and then another being our Microsoft practice with some BI, QA, AI, IoT. And one thing that kind of sets us apart is the fact that we do integrate those. So while we do work a lot with NetSuite, we are able to pull on some of those other experts to make NetSuite more customizable, fit companies a little bit better, and then use those resources as well to leverage that and build full solutions for clients that we work with. Some of those clients you can see at the top of the screen, and then we have our core values over here: accountability. We really just strive to hold each other accountable. Trust. We want trust not only internally but with our clients. We give back to our community, and then we just want a drive for technology and helping people out. Real quickly about our methodology, I was going to hand this over to you, Ilya, to kind of explain how we do things around here.
Sounds good. So this is our implementation, NetSuite implementation, and implementation in general methodology called BOLD route. So here you can see 4 stages or 4 phases regarding our implementation. First, we spend some time with a customer analyzing their business, understanding their business, and creating special business requirement documents. Then we move into orchestrate phase of the project, where we, along with the client, configure the system. Next phase is training and thorough testing of the system we call it user acceptance testing, as UAT essentially. And once the users are trained and understand the system really well, and remember, training happens in every phase of the project. It's just this is a formal. We tend to do it on every stage of the project, but this is a formal training step in the process. And then the last phase is a delivery phase where we deploy the environment and we provide additional post-go live support. So this, in short, is called BOLD as part of the BOLD route. So we can continue on with the next slide, Nick.
Perfect. So let's dive into kind of what you guys were doing before NetSuite. I believe you guys have been using NetSuite for a little over 2 years, but we kind of need to know a little bit about what drove your change to get an ERP, let alone NetSuite. So Vivian or Andrea, can you give us a little idea of what your operations were like prior to, what systems you were using, and then what kind of those sticking points were?
Well, I'll take the general concept, and maybe Vivian can add some color since she was here. So as a matter of fact, before all the way through mid 2019, where we actually went live with NetSuite, there was pretty much nothing. In the sense that from a system perspective, there was a vast use of Google Sheets in handling purchase order and order and invoicing. We were on QuickBooks, but mostly from an accounting perspective. So there was not a logistic management of inventory, as a matter of fact. So we were just kind of scrambling and trying to put everything together. And once the volume reached something close to 35,000 units per year, that was no longer manageable, obviously. And then, again, I wasn't here, but I've been told that, and I in retrospective, I think it was the best solution. We decided to go at that time probably from a kind of oversized solution, but that make us ready to face the current expansion, and I think we are pretty much in a good shape also for years to come, and that came NetSuite. So I don't know if Vivian, you have some story to tell about receiving the inventory and then trying to figure out how to allocate that and so forth and so on.
Yeah, that would be nice to hear. I just want to add, during the dry run, we were talking about keeping kind of everything in Excel, and you mentioned the story where you had to go to another department and ask for, what's going on with the inventory, how much we have in stock, as opposed to seeing that all of that on some screen. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so before we had NetSuite, we didn't keep track of our inventory, so we really had no visibility in one place of what we have in stock, or like coming on the way in like one system. So if a customer calls us and asks like, is a frame in stock, we'll have to like go to the warehouse and like physically check to see if it's there. But I mean, now with NetSuite, we have kind of everything in one place. So, makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies can actually relate to you in that sense, coming off of QuickBooks or just using Excel sheets. I mean, even in my experience in manufacturing at a speaker company that I used to work for, we even had an ERP, but it wasn't, you had to batch it. So if you did have an order that came in and you needed it to be built or check the inventory, oftentimes you had to print it up and run it down to the warehouse and check with the production manager. And it's, I think it's very relatable for a lot of different companies out there.
Yeah, so it saves us a lot of time not having to run around and like keep customers on hold. Like, hold on, I gotta go run really quick.
But now you're not getting your steps in every day, right?
Yeah, that's the downside.
All right, so let's talk about, after you got NetSuite involved, what kind of improvements did you see as far as, did you see increases or decreases in KPIs in a positive way? I think, I hope it's just my computer that's frozen, but let's see.
I don't see the next slide.
Yeah, GoToWebinar is having troubles today. How about now?
Yes.
Perfect. So I got some KPIs up here. All the people in the audience, you can look at those. But Andrea, did you want to mention like maybe a couple of these that you found were just really significant to you and kind of helped with your day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just what I can say is that the benefit of the implementation of the suite were, you know, multi-layered and exponential, since we were kind of starting from scratch. But for sure, the accuracy rate on fulfillment increased significantly. Obviously, because we have a much better awareness of what we have in stock and what the orders were from the customer. Before, you know, it was a constant matching between Excel spreadsheet. So right now there is a much more systematic, a fully systematic approach to this. So we know what's coming in and we know what's been ordered. We match them and we provide the delivery to the customer. Rate of return as well decreased significantly because we make less mistake in shipping what we need to ship. You know, the 50% on the fulfillment cycle time is just a number, but I think that at the end of the day, if we were to really time what was before, this number would be even higher in the sense. And of course, shrinkage. As much as we were careful in handling the material, not having the support of a system is just such an element in handling the accuracy of the inventory, which is a given that you're going to improve in terms of shrinkage at the end of the cycle. Even because honestly, there was not any substantial physical count procedure before, nor cycle count. So as Vivian described, we were getting stuff at the warehouse, then we were checking what was there and then shipping it out. So if it wasn't there, we couldn't find it. And there was an exercise at year end more for financial purpose of trying to match an inventory which was just based out of vendor invoices for the upload and customer invoices for the download. So it was really an accounting exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and essentially made it impossible to plan. Very difficult to plan if you don't have the right data in front of you.
That's correct. And if we look at our business model, just for the sake of clarity, we basically launch 2 seasons a year. And there is a phase where we present our collection to our sales force. And after that, there is a period of approximately, a month and a half, where there is a massive collection of orders from our account. We are talking about today a network of more than 700 accounts across the world. So we consolidate this order on different styles. At the same time, we push purchase order to our manufacturer in Japan. The fact is that this product then came to us with a specific cadence. So they don't come all together, and more specifically, they don't come consistent to what the orders were. So think about the sales order, kind of a bulk order with multiple styles, multiple color, and then we receive inventory as we go, which are most likely than not like one batch with one style and one color. So here, that is probably the biggest challenge that we had in handling this situation, and that's where probably what we what you guys did, because I wasn't here honestly. So I'm not gonna take any credit for that. That's what you guys figure out with the pro forma process procedure.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you to talk a little bit more before we move on to the solution, to talk a little bit more about your customers, where they are, and the challenges that you face on the demand side, specifically to regions, allocation, and other things related to demand.
Yeah, our customer right now are pretty much everywhere in the world, aside from China. China is a huge market where we haven't entered yet for a series of reasons, and we are starting in Middle East. For the rest, we have a consolidated market in the U.S., which represent approximately 40% of our business. Another 30% is Europe, pretty much across Europe, with Italy, Germany, UK, and France being our main market there. But we have account pretty much everywhere. Asia Pacific is another important market, with Korea growing exponentially. Japan, our second home, we started a little bit later in terms of distribution, but it's growing fast. Australia is a consolidated market, so the complexity is out there, and the goal is to keep developing the most relevant doors out there in a fairly consistent way. So in terms of managing the demand, the goal is to have this limited edition coming in and being distributed pretty much to kind of preserve this balance across the globe, as a matter of fact. And inside this, in each single market, there is a complexity connected to the nature of our account. We have some account, and the classification, the cluster that we consider in terms of customers keeps evolving. So today we had some parameters, and today are slightly different. So we have some element which is strictly connected to the importance that each single account has for our brand. So they might not be extremely relevant revenue-wise, but they are very important from who they are and what we want to do. There is definitely, a relevance on how much sales they do with us. There are strictly technical components like how good of a payers they are, which are metrics definitely important. So in allocating, the supply, the limited supply, to a larger than expected demand, we need to consider all these elements. So it's fairly complex, and it is becoming more and more complex as we try to drive the machine, in a more accurate way.
Yes, absolutely. So Vivian, we're going to talk a little bit about one of the solutions that we built for you, and you call it Performa. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is, how JMM uses it, and what is making it unique?
So basically, a Performa invoice is an invoice that we use to show customers what we have physically in stock and ready to ship, so we can collect a prepayment. And we basically, based on our inventory, we are able to pick the items systematically for what's available, and based on the items picked, a Performa invoice is generated to send to customers.
Okay. And you send it to them, they send the payment, and then you apply the payment to the invoice, and you continue processing the order or orders, right? It could be multiple orders, right?
So we needed this solution because we used multiple sales orders, and this was the only way to combine multiple sales orders into one invoice.
Right. So only specific lines that are being picked or ready to go, right, you would put them on a Performa and then send out that document to the client for approval and payment.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so let's move to the next slide, Nick, and I'll talk a little bit about our solution. So essentially, as we were going live, so we phased this project. So what we like to do at AlphaBOLD, depending on what we're doing with a client, in this case, we were implementing NetSuite, and we had many priorities before go live date. So and we had a limited budget as well, right? So we're always kind of limited by the budget and by the scope of work. So what we did is we decided to phase this project. We, with the client, with Jacques Marie Mage, we decided what is the optimal solution, what is the best case scenario when it comes to a customization and a product. And then we said, okay, let's phase it. Let's see what we can deliver around go live of the project. And that was that phase one. And then as the customer, as GMM gets comfortable with NetSuite, then we'll introduce phase two and then subsequently phase three as well. So we wanted you to get comfortable with the system first and then introduce improvements to the process. So I'll walk you through, so if you move to the next slide, Nick, I'll walk you through the process, what we did. So in the first phase, we created a simple saved search. If you're NetSuite users out there in the audience, you'll understand what that is. From the saved search, where we're listing the items that are, let's say, sales order lines that are picked for a specific customer, we gave GMM the ability to create a printed form and then send that form to the customer. As you know, this is just a printout. You would send it out, but there wasn't a real transaction in NetSuite. There was no real tracking that was possible, and there was a lot of manual work that resulted because of this kind of limited process, right? It still worked. I mean, you could still create a nice form from NetSuite or a nice printed Performa, but there was no tracking capability within the process. So if you move to the next slide, let's see what's next. So then in phase two, what we decided to do is we decided to create a real transaction called Performa Invoice, right? And essentially, if you look at this diagram, you see all these different sales orders and they have their natural flows. Sales order goes into an item fulfillment, which is a shipping transaction. And then once those lines are shipped, sales order lines are shipped, then you can invoice those lines that are shipped, right? Create an invoice. So we did not disturb the natural flow of NetSuite. Sales order resulted in an item fulfillment. Item fulfillment was then transformed into an invoice. What we introduced is a transaction on top of this flow, and we called it obviously Performa Invoice. And we, so if you go to the next slide. So then what we did is we gave the ability to Vivian and her team to pull the appropriate sales order line. So you select the customer on a Performa, and then we gave her the ability to pull the relevant sales order lines directly to the Performa by clicking a button. That's that little button near the circle number 2. And then by clicking on that button, the sales order lines that are appropriate and relevant would be brought on to the Performa transaction on a line level. So next slide. So as a next step, we linked sales orders to Performas automatically. So now we created relationships between sales order lines and Performa transaction. We also created a relationship between the invoices. So if the invoice is created from a sales order, now it's also linked to the Performa, and all of that exists on a Performa lines. So now we have a way to link all of this together and provide tracking. So if you go to the next slide, The final thing that we did is we gave the user the ability to apply a payment to the pro forma. So imagine sales orders and invoices, and now you have this separate transaction that's linked right to the sales orders and invoices. And we gave the ability to Vivian to apply the payment directly on a pro forma, right? And then through a customization and a backend process, where we're able to pull all the invoices that are linked to the pro forma and close them by applying the payment that's attached to the pro forma. So if you move to the next slide, please.
I tried, but again, my screen is
stuck
paused.
again. Yeah, let's try again, refreshing.
Yeah, give me a second here.
Sounds good.
There we go.
Thank you so much. So we created all of this, but then we realized, okay, now the users also have a need to speed up the process a little bit, right? So in this case, Vivian needed to be able to import performas and then specify the sales orders that this performa is related to, okay? And we tweaked our customization to allow the capability of importing those transactions via regular NetSuite CSV import tool. So we enabled that functionality. So now Vivian can take all these performas, bring them into the system, and then automatically the backend routines are adding the lines to the performas, and then she can proceed to the next step of the process. We also, what we did is we created a scheduled process that I believe that we may still be testing, right? It's not fully implemented yet, but we created a separate process where if the payments are submitted before the invoices are created, we created a schedule that goes and checks for the invoices that were created after the fact, so that these payments can be applied properly to the invoices from the Performa object. So that was phase 3, and now I ranted a lot, so I will give you some time, Vivian, to give us your feedback. Tell us what has improved through the implementation of this process and this customization.
I think with this new process, so in phase 1, it was basically just a pretty report that we created. There was no real transaction in NetSuite that we can look back into. So once we send a Performa out, we would either have to track it through emails or we save it as a file in NetSuite. So now when we moved into phase 2, we actually have a real transaction. If a customer calls us and asks us about a Performa, we can easily search for it. And then we can also see, like, based on a sales order, which sales order is related to which Performa and which payment is related to the Performa, just so all the transactions kind of have a link. Because the way NetSuite is built, it's kind of based on like one single sales order, and we can't combine multiple sales orders into one invoice. So this is kind of our around it.
I mean, there are processes in NetSuite. There are grouping invoice processes. There are a lot of other processes in NetSuite that allow you to consolidate transactions, but none of them work exactly like you need it to work.
Yeah.
And that's a concern, right? We needed a solution that really meets your requirement, meets your need.
Yeah, and then in phase 3, this was when kind of everything came together. Because I'm able to process like 100 Performas at once, and we don't have to manually go in and create one at a time with like this import. This really sped things up, and then we were also able to create a workflow which automatically sent out these transactions to customers. So that also saved us time for customer service, and then we had also have another workflow. Now that it's a real transaction, we can create workflows to like send follow-up emails for customers who haven't paid yet. So that completely took away, I would say, like, I mean, creating Performa is like 20 hours a week for customer service around. So this helped a lot. They don't have to do that like daily anymore. And it's kind of
Wow. Wow. So would you say 20 hours turned into 2-3 hours or 10 hours? What would you say would be this time saving for this process?
So when we like send follow-up emails, that's done daily, and we have like 3 members in customer service, and it takes them about an hour each day to do that. And then for this, it still takes me a little bit longer just because of our allocation process. But I think it still takes me like a day to get through this, only because our allocation process is a bit difficult. But without that part, if you're just picking an order, if that's all you need to do, then I would say like an hour. Like you can export everything after you pick it and just import it back in.
Wow,
That's great.
that's great news. I wasn't aware of this. This is amazing. Okay, so following on, unless Andrea, is there anything to add relative to performance?
I mean, I think that was a a very powerful like example of wonderful tool. I would say that NetSuite is a very potent, powerful platform. I work all my entire life before with SAP, which is as powerful, I think, but much less flexible. And especially what I notice is that in less than a year or so, I think internally with Vivian, we developed the capability of visualizing what NetSuite can do. And then through the partnership with you guys, find a technical solution that little by little brought very much significant, improvement in the accuracy and saving of time. I mean, I was with my AR team this morning, and I'm getting them involved into accounting because ever since we started, I think I mean, whatever Vivian and you guys implemented, free about 25% of their time. So I think that this was a very good example of how the right system, the right people in place. Because I mean, without Vivian, it would be very difficult to keep improving.
Right.
And the right partnership can bring a substantial benefit to the company.
Amazing.
That's great
All
to
right.
hear.
So the next question is, what's next? Where do we have pain points, and what are we trying to solve on a company level and a partnership level as well?
Well, I mean, there are a couple of projects which are already, in an advanced stage of implementation. I would say the data warehouse and the Power BI reports. So what we're trying to do is to give some voice to the enormous amount of data that we have, some order. So we have been working with your team in moving data from NetSuite into a data warehouse environment through a connector, and from that to a bunch of Power BI data set where we can easily, we're still fine tuning that and releasing that, but we have some advanced, call it prototype or product already in place. There is the tax management. Jacques Marie Mage has grown, and with that also the compliance requirement. We have still today a custom solution in place to collect sales tax for the wholesale business, and we have our Shopify platform on e-commerce running independently, but we need to bring everything together and have the Avalara engine working properly. So this is a project which is going on as we speak. And then there are the two mainstream. I think that the allocation here is a big part of it, because right now the allocation engine is still, heavily relying on Vivian's and intelligence with some input from the outside. So that's an area where we'd like to work in the future. And I think that here limits are just, our imagination, I guess, because we can think about AR or anything like that. And then, I mean, from an inventory side, I think there are still steps to be taken in terms of automating some of the steps. Like we're not currently handling barcode. We don't have any RFID. It's still fairly expensive on that side because of the volume that we have, but it's definitely a step that we will be taking in the future to make it easier, the receiving and the tracking of all the movements of the inventory.
Okay, so Nick, just move to the next slide. I just want to show NetSuite supply allocation. We started exploring that a little bit with Vivian. We're looking into the ways of making this work for Vivian and her team. We still have some work to do, right, Vivian?
Yeah, I'm still kind of trying to figure out everything and like testing.
Right.
Once we get this going, along with the Performa, that will save us a lot of time.
Yes, absolutely. And then if you show the next screenshot, we already built some Power BI reports that we connected to NetSuite. So we're pushing the data from NetSuite into the Power BI reports. Now I have a question because I'm not closely linked to this project. Are you pushing any other data into these reports, or is it just coming straight from NetSuite? That's more the question for Andrea.
So right now it's coming straight from NetSuite, but we'll add also some forecast numbers, which we might have to handle through Excel spreadsheet. And then the next step will be information coming probably from Google Analytics and different sources, just to bring everything together and leverage on the power of Power BI to visualize in a fancy way instead of having just the usual Excel table and a lot of numbers. It's just a different world,
Yeah, absolutely. And I just also want to add that GMM went live in 2019. Guys, I want to thank you for being our partner all these years, I can say now. Thank you for trusting us.
Thank you for working with us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. It's a joy. So I wanted to see, Nick, if there are any questions.
Let's open this up to some questions. And we'll give it a couple minutes here. The only question we got was a thank you for the presentation. So you're welcome. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yes.
I don't know if we have any others coming in, but as we leave that open for any questions, one thing I kind of wanted to close up with was just saying thank you to the audience, and hopefully that you guys found some value here, and maybe you were able to relate to some of the challenges that JMM had faced. And if you're using NetSuite, it is a great tool, but sometimes it just doesn't fit your specific needs. As we saw with JMM, every company has its own little quirks. So if you want to chat with us, we'd love to hear your processes and see if there's any way we can help make improvements. If you aren't using NetSuite and you're on QuickBooks or Excel and you're running orders down to your warehouse manually and getting your steps in just to see if there's inventory in stock, we'd love to talk to you as well and see if NetSuite is that next step for you, make sure it's the right fit. So we are offering free workshops with Ilya, and we can sit down with you, look at what you're doing right now, see if there is any gaps that we can jump over, or if there is any improvements that we can make, and then provide you kind of with a plan, and then kind of go from there. We did have one question come in. Let's open this up. Let's see, it says, do you have experience with QuickBooks? How do you compare NetSuite with QuickBooks? So, who wants to answer that?
We do. Well, I mean, both of us, I guess, Andrea and I can answer that. But from the AlphaBOLD standpoint, we do have some experience with QuickBooks. We have actually we did, or we do. I'm not 100% sure. We do run QuickBooks here internally, along with NetSuite, or we did. And we have customers, a lot of customers who came off QuickBooks. So we have SMEs that understand QuickBooks really well and could export different financial reports from QuickBooks and bring them into NetSuite, obviously, if you're willing to switch.
And Andrea, did you want to take a stab at that question? Do you have experience with QuickBooks at all?
I do have some. That to me the biggest difference is that QuickBooks is mostly a small company, a small medium company financial platform, while NetSuite is a full-blown ERP system. So it's there are two different animals. It's just it's difficult to compare them. Can be both good depending on what the fit is. Well, what I just want to add just as a note from a company of our size, and we're looking at something in terms of ecosystem, we are 45 people ecosystem. I think that in order to leverage on NetSuite, you really need to have in-house someone who's going to become a sort of champion of it, just because it's very common right now that we talk about business issues and we look at Vivian is that what NetSuite could do for us. And she developed, and this is, again, it's the power of NetSuite to me. It's more immediate that, his competitors, his biggest competitors, she can kind of see what potentially NetSuite can do, and then obviously we do not have in-house the IT skills to do that, and that's where you came in. But it's I've seen several of these moments where we have a problem here, Vivian, what NetSuite can do. Let me think about that, and that's in a couple of days she comes up with something, and then all right, let's work with AlphaBOLD and figure out what we can do. And so far the result has been impressive. I don't think that you can do something like that with QuickBooks, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, just to conclude, it's a scalable solution where there are no limits really. You have to have a good imagination.
Yeah, that's why whenever they have issues, I always ask like Gabrielle, like in your best case scenario, what would you want? Like even if it's not possible, like giving what you in an ideal world what you want, and then we can try to figure it out from there.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean NetSuite is a huge tool. It's a great tool. They got a ton of different suites depending on what industry you're in. But one thing I think that is special about what we do here at AlphaBOLD, at least, is we like to work with people like Vivian and imagine how we can do something different, and then try to build that solution to make sure it fits your organization, rather than changing your whole organization's processes around just to fit NetSuite or whatever ERP. So we really enjoy working with people like Vivian to kind of have those ideas, and then Ilya can just take them and run and build a whole solution for it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm checking if there's any other questions that came in. There is not. So I think this pretty much wraps it up. Here's our contact us. So if you are interested in that free workshop with Ilya, then please reach out to us. You can reach us at sales@alphabold.com or give us a call. We'd be happy to help you out. We will be sending out the recording to this if you did want to review it again or share it with your colleagues. And otherwise, you guys have a great rest of your day. Vivian and Andrea, thank you so much for taking some time out to join us. We really do appreciate it. And Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.